I think it is definitely a season where like enough is enough, because it's not only hampering Americans extremely on the physical side, but all of that is crossing over and connecting on the mental side.
How can I help? How can I be useful in ending needless suffering? Do not be afraid of work that has no end.
We have to organize a social movement.
We have an opportunity to lead by example versus just talking, hot air.
I think the more people in this fight, the more we grow. Eventually it could change. The people are the ones that can make the change.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Change Agents, an Ironclad original, presented by our friends just down the road at Montana Knife Company. Today, we're going to largely be talking about forging mental toughness through the lens specifically today of physical activity. My guest is the founder and CEO of MTNTOUGH, Dustin Diefenderfer. Dustin is a hunter, an endurance athlete, and the host of the MTNTOUGH podcast. And MTNTOUGH is a fitness app dedicated to building both mental and physical toughness. Some stats on mental health to prep you for the episode. Men account for 80% of the suicides in the United States. One study found that 1 in 8 men experience symptoms of mental health problems compared to 1 in 5 women. And 9% of men say that they feel anxious or depressed on a daily basis. An estimated 31% of all US adults experience a diagnosable anxiety disorder at some time in their lives. And research has shown that practicing regular physical activity at least 3 times a week by their definition reduces risk of depressive episodes by 25%.
You know, momentum works in both directions, right? It can slow you down and make you feel like things are impossible. But if you have a good amount of it, it can make you think like, hey, I can accomplish any task. But if our brain is constantly looking for the path of least resistance, how the hell did we evolve to the point where we are, where we're doing the things that we are now? Or are we just drafting on people who legitimately wrap their head around the concept of doing something every day and searching out the things that are difficult? And the rest of us are just, benevolent beneficiaries of those few people?
Yeah, it's a multifaceted, deep question, because I think that primal instinct of survival, shelter, safety, food, and rest is there. But I still think the deep inside of our DNA is a desire for improvement and advancement. So you can still be improving tech like a Zoom call, but you can still be lazy once you're done at work. So it's pretty deep, I think, DNA stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're our own worst enemy. Do you think you can be mentally tough, but also lazy?
When I think about mentally tough individuals, a lot of times the brain does go to the sports action military figures when people are asked that question. So you think about someone grinding through a hard workout. You think about someone grinding through a hard mountaineering expedition and how that individual may be mentally tough. But as I've matured through the MTNTOUGH journey, for sure, mental toughness is so much more and deeper than that. And now it is kind of the role models I look for are it's that paralyzed guy that's a farmer and a rancher, and even though he's in a wheelchair, he still never lets life bring him down.
Yeah.
That individual might not work out at all, but he is mentally tough because he found a way to never let adversity bring him down. So no matter a pandemic, no matter a financial crisis, no matter a family health crisis, he's still pushing forward. So that adversity is going to hit him just like everyone else, but he's not going to let him, that's not going to bring him down. He's always going to be pushing forward. I think that is much more the essence of mental toughness than someone grinding through a really hard workout or a couple days of backcountry hunting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How do you explain that to people, though, who come to the gym and they they not only define their self-worth by their capability around inanimate objects that matter not at all, and also are in shapes that you often would never find in real life anyway, right? I've yet to find a linear object equally loaded on both sides in the real world. If I do, I'll take a picture with it, I suppose. But there are so many people, and I've fallen into this category myself at times in my life, where it's like, you know what, I'm crushing it in the gym. Never mind the fact I'm completely failing at many other aspects of my life, a complete train wreck. But you can get through a hard workout, and they think that that is the essence of mental toughness. How do you bridge that gap with people and try to explain to them that there is more to this than just what happens in the confines of a gym?
Yeah, that's been our kind of ethos since the beginning, that we've been striving to teach people and striving to get better at every single year. We're going into our 9th year now of Mountain Tough, and that is not an easy recipe. And we've played with it a lot over the years of, is it finding your why? You're going to hear and see that a lot. And certainly that is helpful. And certainly having a powerful why is going to get you through difficult physical endeavors and difficult mental endeavors. But that the wheels fall off the bus a little bit on that, if that is your only strategy, because there are people that are going to struggle for years and years to find their why. And so I don't think that is the golden nugget answer that, potentially we once thought it was, even though finding your why is extremely helpful. And once you have that very powerful why, then physical, mental, spiritual, nutritional, resilience all become much easier because you are running it through that grid. But that whole question has just imploded on me for individuals that don't have that why and struggle to really find and create that why, because artificially creating it doesn't give it the power that it is when it's real. So like an artificially created why works better than no why at all. But unless it's really something you believe in deeply in your heart, it doesn't have that power of a real bold and strong why. And so I think that is certainly part of it, but I think that getting individuals to focus on just mental, physical, emotional, nutritional resilience all the time as they're building up towards that why has certainly been a helpful recipe, because there is some magic on those individuals that are struggling either physically or mentally with their mental toughness. Maybe they're compassive, maybe that they just can't get any action under their steps. We do see all the time that once you start training your physical and your mental and eating better, and these goals do start forming after you start feeling better at times. So for many individuals that don't have that powerful why already, just getting them going certainly has often led to the creation of a why.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to break the rust off of the gears a little bit if they're atrophied. I guess no pun intended there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're locked in place and you're lost at sea in a storm and you don't even know which direction to move, I mean, I think the hardest decision is picking one and getting some momentum. What do you use and how do you help people find a why if they come in and they are just lost?
Usually we will definitely work with them on identity. So habits are really easy to lock onto when you connect them to identity. And an example of that would be if I have a 55-year-old come into the gym, or I speak to them online around Mountain Tough training, and they're having a difficult process getting in shape and they haven't worked out in a few years, then working with them on their identity is certainly one of the best strategies we have found. And so I would go down the road with them of reframing their issue of being physically unfit around setting up a new identity around, hey, do you want to hunt with your kids? Do you want to hike with your kids? Do you even want to be able to keep up with your kids? Can you keep up with your kids now? And do your kids have kids? Do you want to be able to spend some time in the outdoors with your grandkids? Do you want to pass on this heritage of hunting to your grandkids? Do you want to participate on those trips? And so when we go down that road, their mindset does start shifting. They're like, oh yeah, like I can't even hang with my 16-year-old right now for a day in the mountains. And certainly I'm not going to be able to hang at all or even go or participate with my grandkids. And I want my identity to be a mountain hunter. I want my identity to be a mountain hunter so that I can play with my kids, hunt with my grandkids. I can have the quality of life to make sure that that is still a possibility in my 50s, 60s, and 70s. When they switch that identity from just thinking that they need to do some physical exercise to thinking long term and connecting that to who they are as a person, that's when we see some really powerful transitions happen.
9 years. What do you think it was going to be versus where you have arrived at now? I'm sure they're exactly the same, just a straight line of steps.
Yeah, 9 years ago is crazy because I had no idea we'd really evolve into what we are to now. I think that, that's going to be a common entrepreneurship topic for sure, is because the evolution never stops happening. We're always trying to adapt, to overcome, to survive as business owners. But when I started 9 years ago, it was so much different than it is now. I knew that I wanted to do something physical. I needed a physical, demanding job. And I knew that I needed to set up something that also helped individuals kind of fight this physical and mental, spiritual, nutritional fight. But it started brick and mortar. So I was training individuals from the park behind my house. So it started just in the park sessions under the Mountain Tough name, all under the premise of getting people ready for the backcountry, all in Bozeman. And then it just kept growing and growing from there. And so I started hauling around dumbbells in the back of my truck to train more people at parks. And then winter was coming in Bozeman, so we moved from the parks into a leased facility. And when I moved into that very original leased facility, that's really when we formed the Mountain Tough team, and we chased this mission of how can we make someone an always ready individual so that they're always ready for what facility. It was just a one program that people purchased online. There was no app, there was no subscription. It was the pre-season prep Mountain Tough program that would get you ready for like that 7-day mountain goat hunt or that 7-day Colorado elk hunt. But that was our only program. That was our only offering. And I really appreciate and enjoy where it is now, because I do believe that we are put here on this earth for the right time, for the right reasons. And as we have evolved, so has there been a deterioration of America. And so we are big believers in that, like the call to action, right now is America. We need to talk. Like, being an American has to stand for something. It has to mean something. And so many of these issues that we are fighting are related to us being stuck on kind of the gravy train of affluence. And Mountain Tough, everything we're doing is to get people off of that gravy train of affluence. And they're doing it well, and they're doing a good job of it in the Mountain Tough community because of that focus of mental, physical, nutritional. The outdoors are a big component of that. And so even though when we started 9 years ago, it was, how can I get this guy in shape for hunting season?
Mm.
By laying that foundation right away of it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than a hunt. And then fast forwarding 9 years, it has put us in a pretty incredible spot to wake a lot of Americans up and then help a lot of Americans after we wake them up. And I think that, there's the famous cliche statement that you hear all the time around, hard times create strong men create good times, times create weak men, and then weak men are going to create the hard times. I do believe in America, we have some weak men and we have some hard times right now. And I think, in many, many ways, Mountain Tough is positioned incredibly for a time like this, because every single thing that we're doing is trying to create strong men, and we're trying to fight away from many of the issues that have created weak men, that's created these hard times. And even though our DNA is in backcountry Western hunting, what we're doing now is so much bigger than that. And so I'm really glad the way that it evolved, even though I had no clue it would evolve that way in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm a fan of a lot of what Jordan Peterson says. And one of the ways he describes basically getting your life in order is, you need to clean your own room before you go out and try to clean up the world or judge anybody else's room. Mm-hmm. And in the world we live in, I mean, you and I, we could communicate over social media. We're not in the same room right now, but we're still able to do this. But we could take that step further and go to social media and start nitpicking and complaining and connect with people that we'll never meet on issues that may seem important to us, and spend our day or our week or our month or our life angry, just shouting out into the void, and never spending a single second of time actually getting our own house in order, but we're judging everybody else's. And I describe the environment that we're living in. We're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels. And I wish I could say that was my my saying. I stole that from somebody else, a buddy of mine, Simon, who lives in Singapore. Shout out to Simon. But it's when I don't think people understand, and I'm gonna say this broadly, largely in the first world, they don't understand how good that we have it. I was having this conversation yesterday. At the age of 18, if young men and women were forced to go and work or serve in a third world country where survival to the end of the day, week, month, year is legitimately in question for the people that live there all the time, I think it would so drastically round the edges on the behavior of so many people, because they would have a true understanding of where they are in relationship to where other people are. And without that context, I don't know if it's possible for people. I mean, it has to be possible, because some people do seem to have an awakening in that. But it seems to be extremely difficult without that level of context to even arrive at the understanding that we are in, easy times or good times. And then what comes from that, the creation of, or the good times causing the weakness. It's a tough conversation to have with people if they don't have that level of context and understanding of the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because we were just talking about that from a very similar angle in the Mountain Tough headquarters the other day. Because when I got on the ground for the creation of Mountain Tough, I had just gotten home from Uganda, and I had worked over there for a couple of years. And in Uganda, the topic we were talking about is every single person that you see is like 5% body weight, and they're super jacked. And there are some extremely, lean people for sure because of some starvation problems that happen in Africa, but that isn't everyone. And so if you're looking across a country of, I don't know the exact numbers, but you're talking about, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million individuals, 99.9% of those individuals that you are going to see when you go into the city or in towns are super, super fit, incredibly fit. Even into their older years, you're still going to see a lot of that, like muscular build, 6% body fat. Most males are going to be 170 pounds, kind of ready for anything. They can do incredibly hard farm work. They can do incredibly cognitive function work as well in a professional environment. Even though they're sedentary in an office, they're still extremely fit. And it is only the police officers that you often see in Uganda that pull you over that are extremely, extremely obese. And it really stands out to you when you're there. Because when you're there, you'll go several months, several weeks without seeing it in an obese individual, which is a culture shock compared to being an American. So
what are you talking about? I was assuming you were just talking about a standard metropolitan city in the US when you were describing those physiques and capabilities.
Yeah, it is crazy. But that obese police officer in Uganda is on the affluence gravy train, because every traffic stop is corrupt. Every traffic stop just to get through is some sort of bribery situation. And so they are oftentimes the most wealthy individuals in that community, because they're just getting cash all day long from a lot of different types of corruption. And when we look across America, that is an analogy of kind of what has happened. Is the good times were so good that we have been corrupted by our own affluence. And not only has it's hammered us from the mental side, it's hammered us from the physical side. I mean, physically, the country is in really bad shape. Like 83% of American men right now can't do one unassisted pull-up.
Stop it.
Yeah, 83%.
That does not even make sense to me. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Montana Knife Company, a brand that I am very fortunate to know quite personally. They're 120 miles south of, literally 120 miles south of directly where I'm sitting right now. American made right here in Montana, which makes sense given the fact that Montana is in the name, by the youngest master bladesmith ever in the US, Mr. Josh Smith. Now, if you're familiar with Montana Knife Company, you understand the struggle. It is getting harder and harder to actually get one of their knives. If you've ever gone online on one of their Thursday drops, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have literally had knives taken from me out of my shopping cart as I am completing the purchase. I believe that either Josh or Jess are doing this personally. I have no data to actually prove that. But there is good news on the horizon if you have been through this struggle with me. They are planning to release 12 new models between right now and the end of the year. 4 of those are going to be in their military/tactical space. He's already released one. It was called the War Goat, and I'm lucky enough to actually have gotten a hold of one of the prototypes. This one actually wasn't stolen from me, Josh. It was actually given to me by Josh, so I can't really say too much negative about it. This is my everyday carry. This thing is in my fanny pack. You can talk smack about fanny packs if you want. It's where I carry all of my things. But this thing is awesome. Everything about this knife is everything I love about the brand. Quality and construction. They continue to evolve in their quality. The actual final product itself is unbelievably durable. It's unbelievably lightweight. I take it with me everywhere. I never get in knife fights except for with cardboard boxes. And that's the way that I'm looking to live the rest of my life. It's a fantastic brand. I love everything about it, and I love the people who are behind it. If you want to support them, go check out montanaknifecompany.com. And Thursdays, try your luck. Try to get one of their knives. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get into elite shape, or perhaps just make improvements to your current level of fitness, check out the Mountain Tough digital training program. You can try it for free for 14 days, and you can see the results for yourself. The app allows users to train wherever they are with minimal equipment requirements, whether you're in the gym or you're outdoors or you're at home. Users can access top-tier programming that fits into their lifestyle. The Mountain Tough app offers expertly designed progressive training plans that guide users from start to finish. These plans are tailored to build resilience, strength, and endurance over time, preventing burnout and injury. The app features self-guided and follow-along coaching videos, allowing users to be coached through every workout step by step. This helps to ensure proper form, motivation, and intensity, regardless of the user's fitness level. The Mountain Tough app delivers training programs built for the unique physical demands of mountain athletes, including hunters, tactical professionals, and outdoor adventurers. The programs themselves are designed by seasoned strength and conditioning experts, elite athletes, and military veterans. Start your 14-day free trial today and check out the results for yourself. And be sure to use the offer code CHANGEAGENTS, and I'm looking at it as one word, at signup, and you can get 40% off your annual subscription. Remember, use the offer code CHANGEAGENTS at checkout. I mean, you watch the, I love the old black and white videos from, I don't even know what decade it was from, but I'll call it 60s and 70s, a PE class. And they're ripping out gymnastics, not like, floor routines, but push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, walking hand over, walking on the monkey bars from above with, holding yourself up in like a dip grip, pull-up. I mean, all of those things. The shorts the men were wearing, arguably way too short. I'm not a huge fan of the attire that was going on. Mm-hmm. But the slip that our country has had from that level of, I don't even know what to call it, physical readiness, because, people could argue that they're getting ready for different things. But the dangers involved in that slip, I think the way that you described it, we are a victim, or we have been corrupted by our own excess, is probably the best way that I've ever heard it described. Mm-hmm. Because it's comfortable, right? That excess is comfortable, and you want to kind of relax and lay into it, and you don't realize that you're actually creating a long-term problem for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your country. Because you're, you and I know this kind of intuitively. If you want to be resilient, that takes time. Resilience, everybody comes out with a baseline level as a human being, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can build upon these things, or you can actually detract from it. And I think one of the fastest ways to decrease your resilience, even from a physiological perspective, is to let your body go. Your body's not going to be capable of fighting things off if it's in a worse condition. That also applies to the muscle going on between your ears. Mm-hmm. And, I think the hardest part of the conversation, and I used to struggle with this when I owned a gym in San Diego, people would come in to use a round number, call it 100 pounds overweight. And I would talk to them about the journey that it took them to get to being 100 pounds overweight, which you and I can agree, I'm sure, it doesn't happen overnight. It is a relatively long journey for most people, but their expectation on how fast they were going to get rid of that weight often shocked me. 30 days, I heard it described, 30 days. They wanted to be able to knock that amount of weight off. Mind you, most of these people 1 to 2 years to get to that point, and they didn't realize that it might take them 1 to 2 years to actually get back to the neutral, to lose that weight before actually even then, levering back into that other direction of building on top of that. Mm-hmm. So not only does it take time to get into that place, it takes time to get out of it. Yeah. And I wonder what it will take for our country to recognize and realize that 83% of adult males not being able to do a pull-up is a really, really bad sign. And there's a lot of cascading things. If a guy can't do a pull-up, I worry about everything else, right? So I worry about the neck down muscles, but I really, really worry about the neck up muscles as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're spot on. I think we're heading into a time where it's appropriate and needed for us to get kind of angry about the issues. I think it has reached a level where it is enough is enough, because I do think we went through a season where we, as Americans, didn't really know how much the affluence gravy train was impacting us negatively. And we know enough now to know that it is killing us physically, it is killing us mentally, and it's killing us from both those fronts. And so I think the only solution that will take time is for us to get a little bit angry about it and start striving and taking action steps towards some real change. Because you think about the statistics of men, and 83% of American men not being able to do one pull-up, and that is just passing on down to the next generation. So like the statistics around children start to get even worse. So you start with the adults where 3 out of 10 can't even meet baseline physical fitness standards. And those standards are even incredibly soft, but 3 out of 10 can't even meet those standards. And it's just trickling right down to the children. So like physical ed in any sort of public school system is terrible. The obesity rate in children right now is terrible. And so I think it is definitely a season where like enough is enough, because it's not only hampering Americans extremely on the physical side, but all of that is crossing over and connecting on the mental side. And so if you're not feeling good and working out and staying physically active, it's going to have that same impact mentally. So we did see the highest number of all time in the United States for suicide deaths in 2022. In 2024, like 60 million Americans will go in for some sort of mental disorder and be diagnosed. And so it is a war that is hitting us from multiple fronts.
Yeah, I'm looking at some stats right now. It says an estimated 31.1% of all U.S. adults will experience a diagnosable anxiety disorder at some time in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 2 stats after that, research has shown that practicing regular physical activity at least 3 times a week reduces risk of depression episodes by 25%. But people who moderately exercise for 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, have a 43% lower risk of major depression. So we have these stats. The hard thing that I have found in the modern era is that it seems to be now that you can't criticize somebody for not being able to do a pull-up. We are living in a season where if you were to critique somebody for being 100 pounds overweight, you're an asshole, right? Because body positivity, and we need to celebrate how people want to live their lives, and everybody needs to be free to live how they want to. And from a conceptual standpoint, I don't have a problem with people expressing their best selves and living the life that they want to live. But there's also statistically significant data that shows the impact of being that overweight.
Mm.
So allowing somebody to live their life in the way that they want to is one thing. Promoting that as a lifestyle that we should push on other people is another. And I have found it very challenging to actually have meaningful conversations around this, because people will look at you and I, Dustin, and say, well, you guys are assholes. How could you say that I shouldn't be overweight? I'm not overweight. And here's the reality too. The obesity statistics in the United States would be higher if they stopped moving the metric of what they consider obesity to be.
Yeah,
because in the 80s, it was like 10% lower than it is right now. So imagine how many more people would fall into the category of being considered obese. They keep levering that number so less people, well, and actually not that many less people, because they're kind of the BMI index and people's weights are continuing to shift in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But even our own government, in the interest of likely, and this is my assumption, not offending people, they are now no longer telling the truth. I don't know what to do about that. It's an interesting environment that you and I are operating in.
Yeah, I don't like it, because that card can often be a trump card in many conversations, whether it is around obesity, fitness, that the tolerance card can often shut a conversation down. But I think I think it is time to offend a little bit and get angry about a few issues, because not offending and not getting angry about some of these issues hasn't really led us down a great path. And so I think of like the mutilation of children in the name of healthcare, and hasn't really led us down a great path if we just tolerate those conversations and don't speak our side and speak our viewpoint. Or what's going on in the United States now around human trafficking and child pornography. If we don't say what we believe from our viewpoint and we remain quiet about it, it doesn't have a successful track record of really leading us down improvement for the health and the security and the safety and the prosperity of our country. So I've always struggled with that same thing around tolerating and when you're gonna speak up and when you're gonna not speak up.
Yeah.
But it really hasn't proved to be successful for our country. So I think it is good to bring these topics up and to bring them to light in front of people. And
I think so too. And I think people should remember that getting offended is optional.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if something, you can have an emotional reaction to something, but you're also in control of what you do with that emotional reaction. Don't get me wrong. I can get offended like anybody else, but what I try to do is catch myself before I do anything with that. And I ask myself the question, why am I offended by this? And am I offended by this because I see it to be true in myself and I don't want to acknowledge that? Or am I offended by this because it is an ideology that is against my morals? Those are two very different things. You know, if somebody's talking about being laziness and, you know, maybe they describe my last week of my life because I'm, you know, I have some peaks and valleys and I get offended at that. And I want to just, you know, try to shut them down because they're saying something that doesn't feel great to me. That's one option. Or again, like I said, what I try to do is catch myself and try to figure out, why am I having the reaction that I am? Oh, I know why. Because they literally to a T just described my last week. And you're right, I was being a lazy piece of shit. So instead of being upset at them, how about I throw a couple logs on the fire of motivation and change my behavior for the next week? It's optional. You don't have to be offended by the noises that come out of people's vocal cords if they don't align with something that you may believe. I think these are all opportunities. And again, I actually think that's a portion of mental toughness as well. The ability to be confronted with and tolerate and work yourself through ideas and speech and concepts that you may not align with. Like that is an aspect of being able to be resilient and navigate the world that we are living in as well.
For sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There is a phenomenal Bible verse in Proverbs that talks about this, and it's just straight up, be a man that is not easily offended. And there's so much power in that. There's so much strength in that, because as soon as you are offended, your ability to reconcile towards a mutual resolution falls apart. Because as soon as you're offended and you lean more towards anger or volatile thoughts or volatile expressions, your ability to meet in the middle and create some sort of progress just crashes and burns. And I think that, you know, that is a big thing that is lost right now in society, is that we all are very offended around a variety of topics. And so we're having a very difficult time meeting in the middle on those topics. And I think there are many, many factors contributing to that. But, you know, a big one is certainly related to what Michael Easter's latest book is around. And there's several authors talking about this same topic, but it's the scarcity brain around our media and our social media. And so if we are using media devices that are specifically created to drive our thoughts and behaviors, and those technologies are highly addicting and meant to be addicting, and they're meant to keep us coming back and back again, then that the people being offended is just going up and up and up. And so it's hard to dive into these topics and have people head down the right path sometimes.
Yeah, it almost seems like being offended, or the level at which you are offended, is a currency in some way, shape, or form. It becomes competitive. Well, I'm this upset about this topic. Well, I'm upset about this topic. And instead of discussing either of those topics, you're actually arguing about who is more offended by whatever. Fill in the blank.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going on, everyone? This episode is also brought to you by Allegiance Gold. Gold prices have surged, reaching nearly $2,500, a 20% increase in under a year. With traditional investments under scrutiny, gold and other precious metals have become attractive alternatives. The rise in gold prices reflects growing skepticism towards conventional investments and highlights its stability. Notably, even banks are increasing their gold reserves, underlying its lasting value. Gold isn't just a short-term play, it's a long-term strategy for financial security and growth. Whether you're an experienced investor or just starting, gold should be a part of your investment portfolio. Start securing your financial future with Allegiance Gold, a trusted leader in precious metals with top ratings from TrustLink and an A+ accreditation from the Better Business Bureau. Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver, or delivers precious metals securely to your doorstep. If that sounds interesting to you and you go to protectwithandy.com today, listeners will get an exclusive lowest price on the market for select gold bars. That is protectwithandy.com, or you can call 844-790-9191 to talk to an account representative.
There were some dark moments. Holy shit.
We ought to probably have dinner sometime.
They were ghosts.
Okay, this guy's serious.
I mean, it's unheard of, right? Yeah. Tens of thousands of children digging cobalt out of the ground.
You just sensed that it was out there.
It's like they'd been hit by a nuclear bomb.
We're not framing history correctly.
I want adaptability and versatility.
Don't draft Wolf on your fantasy team. He's not going to get the ball this year.
This is going to matter one day.
This is how I pulled myself out.
That's when my eyes were opened.
This is a whole new wildlife enemy, man. This is crazy. Who are these guys?
Us in our own country don't even have the same gratitude towards it.
And he does the right thing because he closes the distance.
We're all programmed in this world to push ourselves even farther.
I don't have to make something important, but what I have to try to do is make something you'll never forget.
How do you define mental toughness?
Yeah, well, my definition of mental toughness is all around overcoming adversity, successfully overcoming adversity. Because as we talked about in the very beginning, I think that so much of your mental toughness in life that is required and is helpful when you are strong and resilient in that area is many times not going to be physical. And so the tool of overcoming adversity through my learnings at Mountain Tough has been the most helpful and is kind of the bread and butter of mental toughness, because how you overcome adversity when you go bankrupt, or how you overcome adversity when there's a health crisis with one of your children is the predominant thing that is going to bring individuals down. And it's a lot bigger than physical performance.
And it's interesting to hear you say that, because your gym focuses on physical performance. So I'm curious, how do you nest, or maybe even in a more accurate way would be in the beginning, how do you hide that message in the programming that you're doing? Because if people came through the door and you're like, here's a pamphlet on mental toughness, they're like, I'm going to go to the Jamba Juice down the road, even though I'm not sure there's a Jamba Juice in Bozeman. That message is so powerful. But again, in my own experience in owning a gym, sometimes you have to nest these things or hide them. So it is almost a journey of self-discovery, meaning that you intentionally wanted them to discover that, but you can't tell them it. They have to define it or describe it or discover it on their own. It's much like, I don't know, your experience with your children. I swear to God, I could tell my kids to do the value of doing something 100 times, and they hear somebody else in their social circle say it, and they will immediately do it, but it is completely lost that I've been saying it for years.
Every time. Yeah. Drives me nuts.
So how do you do it? How do you hide these mental toughness messages, the importance, the meaning? How do you hide that and nest that inside of the Mountain Tough? I'm going to call it curriculum.
Yeah, that's been our ethos since the beginning, and it's all around how we're going to turn ceilings into floors. And so when you turn a ceiling into a floor, that is definitely one milestone of your mental resilience increasing. And a lot of people will see that example play out in their own life. You see it a lot in the running community where someone will tell you that they will never have the ability to run a 10K or a half marathon or a marathon. And then you train them up to that 5K moment or that 10K moment, and they complete that race. And now their past ceiling is their new floor. And so that individual will be like, I thought that was impossible, but it is possible. I feel so satisfied by doing that. That past ceiling is my new floor. And so now I'm going to go on to a half marathon and a marathon and an ultra marathon. Mm-hmm. You see that over and over and over again, because that turning a ceiling into a floor is such a powerful transition point for people in their brain. Once they accomplish one milestone, they want to see if they can stretch and accomplish something just a little bit harder. And so that is primarily what we're doing through our Mountain Tough workouts. Our Mountain Tough workouts are always trying to help individuals turn ceilings into floors day by day, though. And so that way they don't have to wait a year to do it with a marathon or wait a year to do it with a ultra marathon. We're chipping away at that daily through our customers that are training in our app. And so that is often why you find Mountain Tough workouts to be extremely difficult. Our workouts are going to be quite a bit more difficult compared to any competitor that we were to have, because you don't really build any mental resilience by doing a pretty moderate, easy, standard workout. That mental resilience comes from you seeing a workout and thinking, this is impossible for me, or I can't complete this workout, or I would never be able to do that workout. And then you engage and do it anyway. That is when mental toughness is built. And so that is one of our tactics, is our difficulty level for turning ceilings into floors. And then we're going to get into more specific mindset tactics as well. So another example of that would be a false finish. So false finishes really stretch the mind and increase that capacity for resilience. And so a common tactic from the military is, you do a 14-mile ruck. You think you're going to be done for the day at the end of that 14 miles. There's someone there that says you're not done.
I'm familiar with this.
That one is so strong. And so we incorporate that, through our daily process, not every day, but you'll see that pop up in a variety of our workouts. And that tests the mind. And when you test it and you proceed anyway, you build all of this confidence and you build these habits of, I'm just going to do whatever it says. I don't care if it's a false finish or not. And the more that we can do that, just like you talked about it, when you are doing that on a consistent basis, hard things, turning ceilings into floors, fighting through those false finishes, pushing your limits, then that part of your brain, that part of your mental toughness continues to grow and grow and grow. And if you're not working on it, it will just continue to atrophy and atrophy. And so we're chipping away at it throughout all of our physical training programs.
I mean, you can take that false finish analogy straight out into the mountains with which both you and I love here in Montana. Every mountain has a false summit from the perspective of the person who is climbing it.
Oh,
There's always the moment where like, I have just got to get over this little roll or ridge. And you get there, and what do you discover? Maybe it's 3 more feet you have to climb, but I've had it where it's 300 more feet because the angle that you're walking obscured the actual summit, and you have this false summit. And you want to talk about, because maybe you empty the gas tank or what you think is the gas tank, getting over that false summit, only to find yourself on your hands and knees looking up at 300 more pretty gnarly feet of terrain you have to climb. And man, it is a powerful thing to be able to take control in that moment and push yourself beyond what you think you're capable of.
Yeah, I would add to that. It's so incredibly powerful because think about how many times that just happens at home in a non-physical environment. Like how many times at work do you get through some giant situation only to find another situation sitting right behind that that's just as bad or twice as like, that happens over and over again. And so that mentality of continuing to persevere until there is some sort of finish line is very, very powerful to train in the gym so that you can transfer it over to your career. And the false finish at Mountain Tough in the early days when we had a lot of people in the lab and we were running a tremendous amount of classes, we had a couple false finish famous workouts, and I would see people cry. I would see people break down on their hands and knees.
Yeah.
I would see people really kind of bitch and moan and try to bring their whole team down. Like, God, they didn't tell us about this. We're not going to do it. And like that kind of mindset's not going to get you anywhere in your career or anywhere in your marriage. And it was shocking this year. We got the opportunity to go work out and share knowledge with the Ranger Regiment. So we went to 375 this year, and part of it was us kind of showing them some Mountain Tough principles and them showing us some of their principles around specifically mental toughness. And that same famous Mountain Tough workout with a false finish that I've seen make people cry, we pulled out on the Ranger Battalion, and they didn't even sigh. They didn't even pause. So it was like false finish, 600-meter farmer carry, grab your biggest guy. So they'd just done a 2-hour high-intensity workout, and they thought they'd won the whole entire thing. And now they have to pick up this 220-pound guy and sprint for 600 meters so that another team doesn't catch them. And they didn't pause. They didn't sigh. They didn't groan.
You just solve the problem.
It was check, go.
Yep.
And that check, go is that leadership culture, that culture that they've implemented there of mental toughness is just going to apply like to all areas of their life.
So here's an interesting question, and this is one that I don't have a good answer to, but I think about it often. I think one of the biggest signs of strength, specifically in men, is their willingness and ability to ask for help. So how do you balance in the Mountain Tough curriculum where you are focusing on mental toughness and resilience and false finishes, the check, go, regardless of what's coming at you, you're going to be able to go. Beyond the false summit might be another one, and it doesn't really matter. How can we as a society or culture try to help people pursue that, which is a very internal, like you're having an internal conversation with yourself, but at the same time reinforce to them, everybody needs help at some point in time. And you have to be able to, I mean, if COVID showed us one thing, it's that isolation is not good for the human species. I watch people come unwound, people that I thought would be largely mentally tough and resilient. And I think it was oftentimes because they were unwilling to admit where they were struggling and what was going on and their unwillingness to ask for help. How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We saw it so many times in the lab, where in the lab it is common for the teams that are going to win the hardest workouts, they always have the best leadership. They rarely have the best athletes. And at first that really used to blow my mind. And so you would see someone look around at their team and realize who had strengths on the team and who had weaknesses on the team, and they would start making appropriate changes based on that. But you would also see a very tangible example of exactly what you're talking about, that in that leadership environment that is tested under that pressure, often the team that was winning was the team that had enough communication going on to acknowledge and communicate when they needed help. Because when you need help and you express it right away is so much better than expressing it late. And you can see that when it's compressed under a really hard 1 hour workout challenge, because if it's in a 1 hour test under pressure and someone is dying on renegade rows, but they, especially men, they don't want to express that they need help, even though part of the rules of that are you can use help. If they just stay there and struggle and fight it out and slow down and just are chipping away, then you'll just see another team come right through and pass them.
Yeah.
And they could have easily said it right away, but it is definitely a problem. It definitely is a problem with men, and it definitely is an issue that I haven't mastered myself either, because we always think we can do things on our own. We always think that no one has the same issues as us. And, the devil loves it when things are in darkness and we're not talking to anyone about it. And that's where things really get us. The Mountain Tough community is doing a decent job of that by being in a network together, holding each other accountable, communicating with each other through the app. But certainly that's something that we could get better at.
I love that you guys call it the lab. Do you ever go down there and fuck with people and put like a white lab coat on with a pocket protector and like Bunsen burner protective goggles and a little clipboard? Because I feel like you should.
I haven't yet, but I should do that.
You can take that idea and run with it, Dustin, or not. It's up to you. Yeah, we're coming to the end of our time. I think maybe the best way to close it out, given your experience in your own personal life and also the 9 years you have now spent working with people in truly a lab. I would agree, having been a gym owner for a much shorter period of time. It is legitimately a laboratory or a laboratory, depending on what side of the pond you come from, into physiology and psychology. I honestly felt like it was 80-20, 80% being a mental health practitioner, even though I wasn't qualified to do so, and 20% explaining to people how to do a deadlift appropriately.
Yeah.
Yeah. What advice, if you had a piece of advice for people for developing mental toughness and a healthier overall approach to life, what would it be?
It's certainly really close to making sure that you're forging physical, mental, spiritual, emotional resilience every single day. That's where I've seen, the biggest transformations and people building that largest foundation to pull from when things get really difficult. And we call it like an always ready mentality. And the always ready mentality has been quite helpful, because many times when an individual signs up for Mountain Tough, they think that they're signing up to go on this Colorado elk hunt that they're not really in shape for. But we know that we just kind of had a positive bait and switch happen. They are going to get in better shape for that Colorado elk hunt, but we're also about to help that individual become a better human being, a better husband, father, mother, friend, employee, boss, because all of the physical, mental elements are going to start stacking in their favor. And the always ready mentality helps because you have to switch for us, it's they have to switch hunting being the end game, the main event, into thinking of it much bigger than that. So the writing we did in the early days around Always Ready is like, what if your truck rolls on your way home from work this afternoon with your family in the truck? Are you physically and mentally in shape enough to handle that situation? Or like, what if your daughter comes up to you and asks you to run a Spartan next week? Are you going to be able to run that with her without having to say no and do a year of training? And that always ready mentality has seemed to be the most helpful for people, because these goals that we're chasing aren't big enough oftentimes. So if your goal is to be in shape for hunting, if your goal is to be in shape for your first marathon, that isn't big enough, in my experience, to create decades of life transformation. Decades of life transformation, it needs that connection to who you are as a human being. And if who you are as a human being is connected on that always ready angle, like I'm a human being because I am a father to my children, a husband to my wife, and I am a member of this community. And part of those three things requires me to be ready physically and mentally for a lot of different things. When individuals start thinking that way rather than short-term goals, that's when you see some major changes start to happen, because the short-term goals are good, but if it's not something deeper than that, that's usually where you see that roller coaster of training, where someone will drop 40 pounds, they'll run a marathon, they'll go on an elk hunt, and then they'll pack that 40 pounds right back on. And in that roller coaster,
60.
Yeah, or 60, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think it's that bigger vision on who are you, and knowing who you are, what does it require for you to be, physically and mentally ready.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to learn more about Dustin and his work, you can go to MTNTOUGH.com. That is MTNTOUGH.com. Thank you again for listening to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by Montana Knife Company. We're going to be back next week with an all-new guest and an all-new episode. See you then.